Hey, I'm Jon Gordon with Positive University, and today my guest is Trent Shelton. Trent, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me and sharing your platform, man. It's truly an honor.
Well, I'm fired up to talk to you. I know the impact you're having, and just take us back. When you were a young boy, what did you want to be when you grew up?
When I was young, my whole goal was to be a professional athlete, whether it was basketball, baseball, or football, and that was my dream. I had two older brothers, and they played sports, so it was kind of, just by default, I didn't have a choice, right? So I wanted to play sports, just seeing them play throughout our childhood.
And you played in college, I know that. How did that go?
It went great. I played at Baylor. At that time, we were still kind of struggling a little bit, but it was a great time. I had a great career there, and full scholarship, free education, so you can't beat that.
Were you a leader during that time? Because I know that you're leading so many now, but did you see the leadership within yourself back then?
I get that question a lot, and I look back and but I wasn't a vocal leader. I was more of the actions guy, silent leader, just led by action. So I wasn't the rah-rah guy. I wasn't the guy that was going to really hold other people accountable to the point of like calling them out. But I just made sure when you looked at me that I was a great example for you of how to work hard and just how to go for your dreams. How
important is it for young people today to have character, the kind of character that you had where you lead by example?
I mean, it's super important, especially in the world we live in now with social media. It's very easy not to lead by character because you can lead by what you put on social media. You can live a lifestyle that, I'm not going to say it's fake, but you don't always have to live up to it offline. And so I tell people all the time, and kids, like, make sure that you're a reflection of what you believe in, what you stand for. And one of the things that I always use, even with myself to this day, if I couldn't say one word, what would my life say? And I would tell everybody watching this now, like, if you couldn't post about it, if you couldn't talk about it, what would your life say? And your life should speak so loud that people know what you stand for and what you believe in.
So what would that word say about you right now? What would that word be?
I think that word would be someone who truly cares to help other people. And, I couldn't think of a cool way to answer that, but that's just the way I would say, I care about helping people. I care about using my story. I care about being real and transparent. I'm not a perfect person. I don't think my presentation is perfect. I don't worry about that. I just want people to look at me and say, man, Trent cares, and he really lives it, breathes it, and he is that person that he talks about. So I think that speaks for itself, and hopefully it does.
Yeah, I know it comes through. I know some coaches that have heard you speak, and they said you were off the charts.
Awesome.
Amazing. So I know, your real story, your authenticity really comes through. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So, take us back. You played football, and then afterwards, what was your next step after football?
Right. So played football my whole life. Like a lot of athletes, that was, who I was, at least I thought that's who I was. That was my identity. And so I never worked a 9-to-5, like that was my job. So I didn't know life outside of sports. So when I went to the NFL and, it was very rocky, that was my dream. I made it there. But when I got there, it was like the downfall of my life because things weren't panning out. I was getting released and I didn't know what to do with my life. And I hit a deep depression even while I was there. And I was turning to things that I shouldn't have turned to, trying to live a lifestyle just to impress other people. And I was dying inside. I had this silent battle. And I tell people, two situations really catapulted my change. And one was my son being born. As a father, it's like, I want to set an example. And I understand that the choices that I make will be my child's consequences. And I didn't want to give him broken tools to build a future. So that made me really look in the mirror and say, you got to get it right. And the second thing was my college roommate committing suicide. And that right there was the spark to let me know that life isn't promised. And I don't want to leave this earth, with incompletion, as I like to call it. And so I was in my room, 2009, and I just got released from the Seahawks that season. So they didn't bring me back. And I was wondering what I'm going to do in my life. At that moment, it wasn't like a big, it wasn't like something crazy happened. I just remember being in my room looking around at my trophies and my son on the wall, and I just went through this emotional moment cried out to God. I was like, you know what? I don't know where I'm going to go with my life. I don't know what the plan is, but I do know I don't want to stay in this mindset anymore. And I just told myself that it's rehab time. And at that moment, it wasn't to be a speaker. I mean, that was my biggest fear. It wasn't to be a coach. It wasn't to be anything that people see me as today. Literally, it was for me to change my life, mind, body, and soul. So I went to the gym. I picked up books. I didn't like to read at that time, but I picked up books. I changed my circle. I changed my friends. And I had one more workout, and I knew, like, in the NFL, you get 3 years pretty much. And I had one more try with the Redskins. And it's funny because I believe that God used that as a way to get me right. Because I was like, I got to be prepared for this. Went out, ran a 4.3, got signed by them. And, it was kind of the same process, cut and release. But at that moment, I realized that my life was bigger than football. I realized that I had a deeper purpose, a deeper calling. And that's pretty much how Rehab Time got started in 2009.
What is the essence of Rehab Time? What does that mean?
So the acronym, I guess the cool acronym would be renewing every heart and body. That's what it stands for. A lot of people hear the word rehab. You think, drugs, alcohol addiction, and it can be for that for people. But I always tell people we all have something we can rehab in our life, whatever it is. We all have some, I call it weakness, that we can strengthen on a daily basis. And so the word rehab for me came from an athletic standpoint. When you get hurt, you go to rehab. Rehab, it sucks, to be honest. It's a painful process. Sometimes you want to come back quicker, and you come back quicker and you get injured again. So you have to practice patience. And so for me, I took that same mindset into life. Like, let me rehab my life, mind, body, and soul in every area. So that's what it stands for.
I love that. So we do a thing called Hero Hardship Highlight, the Triple H. So who's one of your heroes?
My father. My dad is definitely one of my heroes. And I know that, well, I don't know if that's cliche or not, but, my dad is someone that he was there my whole entire life. I saw how he treated my mother, still treats my mother incredible today. How he was there for us three boys. Like both my parents really are my heroes. But as a man, having my dad be at every game, whether it was across the country or at home, he's there. And he set a great example for me to make me understand what fatherhood was about and being a father. And so I always just want to try to be half the man that he is. So my dad, it's nothing he wouldn't do for us. So he definitely is my hero. And so is my mother too.
So my biological father left when I was a year old. And what do you say to the younger people who didn't grow up with a dad? How do you help them?
You can find a hero in anybody. First of all, I would say, and I know it takes time to be able to realize this, but I always say give yourself permission to be great, and you can be your own hero. So realize that. But, looking out in the world, there's so many examples of people. It doesn't have to be your blood or your biological father. You can find a father in anybody. There's people. Some people say I'm that for them. You are that for those type of people. So look out, find a role model that you see like, wow, I like how they're living. I like what they represent, and try to model that as best as you can.
So what's a hardship that you faced that helped you become who you are today?
Man, like which one? I would have to say my biggest one was just losing football. That was my everything. And for people watching this, of course, it might not be sports for you, but sometimes it's the job, sometimes it's a relationship, but that was my everything. And so I thought my life was over. I went through the suicidal, battle. I went through who I'm going to be. I went through, I don't have an identity. And my rock bottom, it's easy to say now, but at that time I didn't realize it. But when I look back, rock bottom changed my life. And if I would have never hit rock bottom, I can 100% guarantee you that I wouldn't be here today doing what I do at Rehab Time. So my hardest times built my strongest faith, and it changed my life.
I love that, because that's so often what happens. But what were you placing your hope in at that time before the rock bottom?
You said, what was I placing my hope in?
Yeah, what was your hope in at that time? Like, where were you placing hope in at that point before you found God, before the rock bottom moment?
Do you mean like in a positive way, or do you mean like in a way of
both? Like,
okay.
where were you trying to find some sort of hope or attaching onto?
Yes. So both sides, right? So I was always raised up in faith, right? Since I was a little boy, my dad's a pastor. So I always had my hope in God, period. But just to be honest, when I started to elevate my life, that relationship started to dwindle down. And so even though I had hope in God, I really wasn't having 100% hope in God. You know, my hope was literally in an NFL team bringing me back. That's where my hope was. That's where my identity was. So literally I would do anything to be signed, right? I would, whatever it may be. So my hope was in the wrong place. And I think when your hope is in the wrong place, it'll let you down a lot. And so I had to realize and focus back where my hope should be at. And I had to realize that the plan that I have for my life might not be what's meant for my life. And that was a hard process to let go of, but it was a life-changing process. And I'm glad I accepted it.
Love that. So what's something that you share with young people about this? Like, where can they find their identity? How do they find their identity? And how do you not let the world and social media steal your identity?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, we could talk for an hour on this, but it's tough because a lot of us, even myself at a point, and I mean, there's always a constant battle with this because, you know, we're human beings. So I think naturally we always gravitate to the external things to determine our worth, right? Whether it's your bank account, you know, how many followers you have a blue check by your name. And it's tough because it's all how many likes that you have, right? And especially with the dopamine hit. I mean, just the science behind that is crazy. And so I always try to teach people is like, without all of those things, right? Like without all those external things in your life, like who are you? And that's a question that a lot of people don't know. It's like, I don't know who I am without sports. I don't know who I am without this relationship. I don't know who I am without 1 million followers. And so you have to dive in deep, strip all those external things away and get back to your internal self and ask yourself those questions. Like, who am I without this? You know, how was I created to be? And for me, my foundation in God is going back to that, like how he created me to be. And it's tough, but I go back to this a lot. Like I want to let people know it's a constant battle because the world's always trying to put these things on you to make you gravitate to like, that's your worth. You were created with worth. There's nobody like you. And when you can truly own that and realize that, like, that's your greatest gift, not to be like someone else, but to be who you are. Like, what do you think? You're imperfect? What do you think that, you know, you look a certain way? Like, that's your greatest gift. Like, understand and embrace that. And that's where your true power rests.
Yeah, my kids for years were giving me a hard time because I was not verified on Instagram.
Yeah.
So I did not have that blue check. That if you're not verified on Instagram, you're nobody. I said, but God loves me.
Exactly.
And recently got verified, but at the same point, I mean, I have to admit, I was happy I got verified. I was like, finally, and yet, why should that matter? But you have millions of followers now on YouTube. You're doing incredible work sharing messages that reach people across all different platforms. How did you grow that platform? And I know you use it for good. It's not about the fact that you have millions of people, but millions of people are being drawn to you. So how did that happen for you?
So I would say the first step in that is me embracing who I am, right? Me really being confident in myself. And not in an arrogant way, but me being okay with who I am, you know, how I look, how I dress. I mean, even with me being a speaker, I'm not your typical motivational speaker. You know, sometimes I wear a suit, but most of the time I don't wear a suit. I have tattoos. And, you know, there are so many people say, Trent, you should dress like this. You should talk like that. And, you know, and I know that they mean good, but I had to be who I was because I knew if I was being something else, I wouldn't have the connection that I do with people. So I think that's the first step. The second thing is I would tell people is you have to be super consistent. We live in a society now where I feel like everything rolls over quick, right? I mean, you can have a viral video today and then 3 days later, people forget about it, you know? And it's like, oh man, I got to come up with another video. And if you live in that, it'll drive you crazy. But I tell people, just be consistent every day. Like put out content, whether it's, you think it's perfect or it's not perfect. And that's how you can grow. You have to realize like, I mean, we all heard this, like nothing happens overnight. And for a lot of people, they see my page and like, oh, I want to have 1 million followers. You want to have the platform, but do you want to go through the struggle is the question. Do you want to take 10 years? I mean, this is my 10th year in 2019 of starting Rehab Time. Do you want to go through 10 years of it? And so my thing that I would tell anybody watching this, the main takeaway is if this is what you want to do with your life, you feel like this is the will for your life, like sign up for it forever. And don't get lost in how many people like your stuff. Don't get lost in how many followers, because you'll always quit. When I first did my first speaking engagement, like my main one, it was like 10 people that showed up. So those numbers told me that this wasn't the purpose for my life, but I focused on impact and not numbers. And now when I do speaking engagements, it's thousands of people, but I had to be embarrassed. I had to go through the sucky time. I had to go through all of those things, the process, in order to get to where I'm at today. So enjoy the journey of it. Like when you look back, that's going to be the most beautiful part of it. Seeing yourself grow and progress. Fall in love with the progression.
So the third H is highlight. And so what's one of your highlights that you've had in your life, but also on stage, where you were like, you know what? I'm doing what I love, and this crowd is awesome, and I'll just never forget this moment.
Man, these are great questions. So highlight in my life, that's tough. Like, my wife is going to watch this, my kids. Like, who do I give it to, right? I have to say, definitely my marriage for sure. And the birth of my kids. I have to definitely put those in. My son Tristan and my daughter Maya. I mean, you know how it is being a dad. It's just totally incredible. And so those moments are just life-changing moments for me. And then as far as with Rehab Time, Fiji, any stage I go on, I'm appreciative. I love it. But being in Fiji and having, it could have been 30 people, but having 3,000 people there engaged and know my content, and it was just totally incredible. And the love that I received, it made me realize, like, wow, like, it was just that moment, like, this thing has really impacted lives. Even though I knew it, I actually felt it in that moment. And so that was totally incredible.
What was the event in Fiji for?
So it was just my event. I go to Fiji probably every other year, and I just do a benefit event for them. I go out there, speak for free, don't charge people to come. And it was just a country that I wanted to go to, just a third world country. And I don't know if you've ever been there before, but it's totally incredible. I mean, the gratitude you receive there, it changed my life when it came to gratitude. So I'm like, how are these people in poverty in the world's eyes, but yet have so much appreciation and gratitude? So I try to go there every other year and just give back, and it's just a beautiful place. I love it. I love the hike, protecting my peace, and I love the people.
So who are a lot of your audiences where you speak? Is it corporate, sports teams, churches? Where do you do a lot of your talking now? Yeah,
so it's a mixture of all of that. Definitely done some sports teams, churches, corporate conferences. It's pretty much a mixture of everything. And I'm always, anywhere that I can, share my message, I want to share it. So that's why you probably get that pot of gumbo with me. I'm like, I don't care who it is. Like, I just want to share my message.
So what drives you every day to put out the post, to connect with your followers, to share the information? Where does that drive come from?
I think two places. For one, it's like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's just a rush for me. It fills me up. It's fulfillment for me. In doing that, just knowing that, every single time I do it, there was a purpose greater than my pain. And every time I put out a message, it's like my past pain is now a present strength for other people. So it brings so much gratitude to my heart in doing that. And the second thing is knowing that there's people out there that need the message. And just to be real with you, John, like, that's a pressure too, because I know that, like today, if I don't want to put out a message, there could be somebody out there that needs it. So finding that balance, it's tough at times, but knowing that there's people out there that can benefit from me just going live is totally cool.
I love that. We're so like-minded. You're just a lot younger than I am, and a lot cooler than I am. But
you're super cool, man.
we have such a similar past, because I struggled with depression years ago, and in my search and quest for healing, I found God, and that changed my life. So I want to take it back to you. So, because you're having all the success now, but let's go back just real quick.
Yeah,
you were depressed. You probably were hopeless. You could have never anticipated all the success you're having right now. So what do you tell the young person, or even older person that's listening to this, that's going through this right now, and they're feeling depressed, they feel hopeless, they want to give up? Because there were times I wanted to give up. I know you did too. How do we help them overcome?
Yeah, so I would give them, it's different things I can say. And so I'm just going to go from the heart on this. Like, the first thing that comes to my mind is I would give them tough love in a way that they understand it. I'm not going to ever be insensitive to somebody's struggle, but I would tell them that, hey, you got to take ownership over your life. You know, you have a choice. You can live in this depression the rest of your life, which I get it, because when most people tell me, you know, like, Trent, it's hard to move on. I say, yes, it's very hard to move on. It's very hard to heal, but you know what's harder? It's staying in this pain for the rest of your life. So I would rather go through a temporary pain than a permanent pain. So I'm big on taking responsibility. That's why I always say it all starts with you. The second thing I will let them know is that your life isn't over. There's more to your life. You know, this is just a season. Like, this is just a chapter. You might have had some bad chapters, but every single day, that's the beautiful thing about life. As long as we're above ground, we have a chance to turn the page. We have a chance to start a new beginning every single day. And the only way that you can create change in your life is to actually make changes. And I know that seems super common sense, but it's the truth. And if you don't, you know, you're going to live the rest of your life, as I call the BC mindset, blaming and complaining. And that's not what you deserve with your life. And so give us
3 changes that they can make and actions that they can take to help them get out of that where they are.
For sure. The first thing that I would tell them, one, is focus on what you can control right now, right? I think a lot of us, what we do is we focus on all the things that are out of our control, right? And we stay there. So, and it paralyzes us. And even to dive in deeper with that, I would say, focus on one change that you can control. Don't focus on, oh, I need to change. And it's so crazy because you're like, this is way too much. So focus on one thing where you can take a step forward. It doesn't have to be major. You don't have to compare it to anybody else. It could be one simple thing, right? Maybe it's walking every day. Maybe it's eating different. Maybe it's, you know, practicing gratitude, you know, speaking to God every single day. The second thing I would tell them to do is find, you know, you hear this a lot, but find a mentor or a coach. And maybe that mentor or coach is a book. Maybe it's for me, a lot of my mentors, I've now got to meet them, but I didn't ever meet them before. You know, I picked up some books and I hated to read, but I was like, in order for me to change, I have to obtain knowledge that I don't have. Like, I don't want to have to, you know, they always say experience is the best teacher. And I agree for a certain point, because there's certain things you have to go through yourself to experience it, but why go through it if you can learn from somebody else, right? And so find a mentor. And the third thing I would tell you is to find a growth environment, right? An environment that promotes growth. Some of us, you might not have that in your house, right? You might not have that in your circle, but get her in an environment. Some examples, a support group at church. Maybe it's the gym. Maybe it's going to a conference, because when you're around people that can change your mindset, when you connect with people that might have been through what you've been through, and now you have confidence that you can get through it because now you're sharing stories and you're hearing other stories, it gives you a lot of confidence in your life to move forward. So I would say, one, you know, focus on what you can control, one change. Two, I would say get in a growth environment. And three, you know, find a coach or a mentor. You can educate yourself.
So who were some of your mentors?
Yeah, so John Maxwell was one. It's cool. I just actually met John like not too long ago, so that was super cool. Rick Warren, The Purpose Driven Life. Dr. Tony Evans was a mentor of mine. Man, there's so many that I'm trying to think who else like was really, really. Sorry about that. Les Brown was one of mine also. So those are just 4 that come to mind, but I'm a sponge of life. So if there's anything that can grow me and change me, I'm all open for it.
I heard Les Brown years ago when I was in my 20s, and you got to live your dreams. You got to live your dreams. And I heard that, and I said, I want to do what he does. And I sent him a letter, and never heard back. Shared the stage maybe 10 years later with him, one of the great moments.
That's awesome.
Of my life. And Dr. Tony Evans, so we know he wrote a book called Kingdom Man. Did you read that book?
Yep.
What'd you think about that book?
I think it was incredible. Very incredible.
Blew me away. I love that book. Are you writing any books now, or tell us about some of the work that you've written already?
Yeah, so I have some self-published books that I'm proud of. You know, when I look back, I'm kind of like, but I'm still proud of it because, you know, it was a part of my journey. So I have some self-published books you can find on Amazon. But my main book that's coming out to the world, which is traditionally published, will be The Greatest You, and it comes out in May in 2019. It's done. We're just working on the extra stuff now. But 2019 in May is coming out, so I'm super excited for it.
The Greatest You. I can't wait. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome. And what are you excited about next? Is it the book? What else are you excited about?
Yeah, the book. This year, so I made a promise to myself when I hit a decade that my wife, sorry about that. My wife keeps on calling. I should have put it on my phone. She's probably going to keep on calling me too. Let me text her from this phone right quick. Let me talk.
All right, yeah, just tell her. It's all good. It's all good. I've had that happen many times. My wife always seems to like to call me when I'm in the middle of doing a lot of things.
There we go. Okay, so that'll work. So I'm excited about the book for sure. And I'm excited about actually just launching my coaching. And I told myself I want to wait till I hit a decade to actually start of course I've been coaching people throughout this whole time, but actually focus on it. So we just launched that. It's called Trent's Inner Circle. So it's cool to be able to dive in deep because, I give people a lot of inspiration, motivation. I will never stop doing that. But now I want to give them the application part that leads to transformation. So I'm super excited about that in 2019.
Where can they sign up for that?
Just go to TrentsInnerCircle.com.
TrentsInnerCircle.com. Okay. And then how often do you meet with all the people you're coaching?
So we meet once a month, a 90-minute session once a month. But we have a Facebook group, and they'll tell you, I can't stay away from them. So I'm in there all the time, going live, commenting and all that type of stuff. So you're promised once a month, but it's pretty much every day.
And I'm sure you have other people that are part of the community that are now helping each other, right? They develop into
big time. And that's the beautiful part about it. And what I love about Rehab Time is just, it's not about me. If you look at my page, you see so many people connecting, helping each other, sharing their stories. I tell people all the time, there's things that I haven't went through in life. I don't know how it feels to be, a single mom. I don't know how it feels to be I don't know how it feels to be, an addict on drugs. But I know there's people in this community that has been, and I'm always open to giving them the platform to be able to say, hey, help this person because you have more experience there.
Trent Shelton, thank you so much for joining me. You are an inspiration. And
thanks for having me, man. This has been a great conversation, great questions, man. And I love what you're doing, man.
Thanks. No, you're awesome. Keep making a difference and keep changing the world.
For sure. Let's get it.